Or maybe you punt that to Elseworlds and let James, say, okay, James Gunn, you are a Superman guy. If Man of Tomorrow, well, that's your audition. If Man of Tomorrow hits, we'll let you finish a Superman story, but that's now Elseworlds. That's no longer our thing. We're starting our own thing. I don't see how it doesn't go that way, given the people involved in what they're doing elsewhere.
What up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Nerd Gen Report. I'm your host, Pablo, and joining me, as always, is Mr. Brian Schultz. For those of you who are new here to the channel, welcome. DC Roundup. Lots to discuss. It was crazy, Brian. I was listening to our show, and I was like, I must have said it in this show, because I know we talked about it. I had said I feel like Netflix is going to withdraw. They're going to pull out. It makes sense. But there are other things, obviously, that probably occurred with that deal that it fell through. But we'll talk about what has transpired.
Yep.
And we'll also talk about what this means for DC now that we have the most probable owner of the DC library and IP. So we'll talk about James Gunn's fate. And we'll also discuss Zack Snyder on the Happy, Sad, what's it called?
Happy, Sad, Confused, Josh Horowitz podcast.
Yeah, I listened to it today. Good interview, man. Listen, I don't got nothing against Zack Snyder. I think he is a creator and is passionate about what he does. And he has ideas that he feels strongly about, and as you should, right?
He's a really good interview, whatever you think of what he actually says. He's one of the better, I enjoy listening to him as a director talk about things that he's passionate about, even if I vehemently disagree with some of the things he says. So,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, and we also, Brian, you had something in the notes about future projects and budgeting.
Yeah, I think now that we can sort of model out Paramount as the likely owner of this, I think we can get a little bit into the projections of what might get greenlit, what might not, and kind of start to think through, on the assumption this is approved and is closed, regardless of whether it's James Gunn or regardless of whether it's someone else, how Paramount might administer the DC universe to us as viewers.
Yeah. So let's get into it, Brian. Paramount raises and Netflix walks. What did you think about that announcement? Did you think of me? Because I said, I think Netflix is going to walk out. And they did. What did you think about that decision?
I think it's a classic case of reading the room as it's evolving and realizing that the risk reward of the path isn't worth it. I don't think it had anything to do with the marginal increases in value that Paramount installed, right? The $31 a share, the ticking fee, the breakup fee. I mean, you start to add it up, and those were basically it's more than 31. It's it's a couple of bucks a share in theory that they've added to the value. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that's why Netflix walked. Netflix walked because the sea changed a little bit against them in terms of their ability to convert and close this transaction. And I think the way you can see that is when this negotiation was reopened. At the start of that, Netflix was kind of in lockstep with WB saying, fine, 7 days. Netflix was actually the one who pushed for, go get the best and final in 7 days. We get 4 days to match. At that point, Netflix is still in the driver's seat of, as long as these deals are close, we have the support of the board. We feel like we have the support of enough votes and the employees. A lot of the kind of the trades articles were suggesting that the employees had kind of come around on, as we discussed, Netflix might preserve more jobs, at least in the near term. And so I think they felt like they had that sort of consensus as long as the numbers were tight. I think what changed was more the path to getting this approved. It felt like intuitively Paramount always had an edge there because of the relationship of the Ellison family with certain individuals. But Ted Sarandos had a pretty good relationship as well, personally. However, at the 11th hour, in something that has nothing to do with what we talk about or what we care about. A member of the Netflix board, you can Google, made some pretty incendiary comments. And that seemed to really rile up the powers that be, who demanded that Netflix fire that individual immediately, to which Ted Sarandos said no. And this is occurring as the revised Paramount bid is coming in. And this is why I point you to the bid comes in, it kind of sits there for a little bit. So Netflix doesn't walk when they see the number. They walk after Ted Sarandos goes to DC. He spends the day in Washington. He has meetings with most of the key parties, except for the most notable individual who would not see him. He leaves DC. Netflix walks immediately. If you want to tell me that's a coincidence, you know, I have stuff to sell you. But like, I just, to me, and I think the reason it makes sense, if you understand the way deals work, if the government opposes your deal, that doesn't mean that your deal doesn't go through. It just really extends the cost and the timeline to get it done. Because if the government blocks, maybe you have to concede and restructure. If the government sues, now you have to fight in court. You have to pay those legal fees. And honestly, the history would say the government's track record in litigation when it comes to mergers is pretty bad. Like companies usually win in the end. Mm-hmm. But it can take 18 months, 2 years. Like Netflix could have found itself in a situation where they were almost filibustering to get past the next election and hope that a new administration would change out all the people involved. And then it's like, at some point you're like, WB is great, but is it worth 2-3 years and how many extra headaches and legal expenses of the time to get it there? I think that's what they looked at and said, that's the thing we don't want to deal with. Paramount, if you think you can get this done, have at it. And I think that's how we wound up where we are. And now Paramount has to make good because they put that feature in the deal where they basically said starting September 30th, they got to pay $650 million every quarter the deal doesn't close. So this is going to be a very interesting subplot because this is a huge deal by value. It's a very large transaction, which means even if there was no politics, this thing would get a very, very close review by regulators. They don't have a lot of time. That's not a lot of time. That's 2 quarters, 6 months to really close a deal of this size would be about as fast as we've seen. Yeah. So don't be surprised if it slips a little bit and WB gets a little more cash in their pocket as a result. But in any case, that's where we're at. They obviously think they can get it over the finish line. They're going to face their own regulatory challenges, especially in Europe. And the California Attorney General has already said they're going to sue and try to block this because obviously Hollywood's in their home state and they're worried about job loss. They're worried about restructuring and they're worried about other things. I can tell you which way the regulators lean politically, which way California leans politically are not the same. So I think this deal will get done, but there's still going to be some noise around it from here on out. And I think Sarandos, look, I mean, the stock validated his decision. It was up 10% immediately. I think the shareholders were saying, look, like as nice as the IP is, you don't need it and you don't need the headache that would have come with a multi-year legal battle to get it. So that's where we're at.
And think about the studios that they're building. They are building to, I mean, Netflix is not competing. Paramount is competing with Netflix. Netflix is doing their thing as they've always done it. And that's give us content, try to give us the best content, or just give us content, period. And they're building studios. Yeah. They'll probably put out those job descriptions and get those people who get let go to come work for Netflix anyway. So I think at the end, when I was thinking about it, and I said Netflix might walk away because of what I see them doing. Listen, Netflix wants content, and if they could get it, obviously at a very expensive deal, they would get it because it would bring in more subscribers, which is what they want all the time.
Sure,
but their construction of the studios, that just signals a lot more content from a lot of different creators having the available space to do those things and it live on Netflix. So now we just waiting to see, because the stuff that I've been reading as of late is James Gunn's job. Where does it stand? Where is he? Right now they're saying everything is going to be as is. Right now they don't need to make any announcements. Again, they don't need to make any announcements about this. They don't have it in the bag yet. Once
they don't own it yet. They don't own it yet. That's why I'm saying the people that are like, oh, they're going to keep it. This doesn't matter. They don't own it yet.
It does. Yeah. We can speculate on what's going to happen with DC and James Gunn. Brian, what are your thoughts on his fate? I still think these next outings, Supergirl, Clayface, Man of Tomorrow, obviously, are the tests to see whether or not James Gunn can deliver the goods. Because you got the other guy who wanted you saying that, yo, Superman didn't do what it was supposed to do. That was already a telltale sign. If he's thinking it, they're definitely thinking it. So, Brian, what do you think?
I think he's out.
You say he's toast.
I think he's done. 0% chance. I think he's done.
Wow.
And I don't think anything about the projects in the pipeline matters at all to that.
Really?
No.
Even if they do well?
I just don't see a world where any of them can do well enough to change the... Here's the thing. I see two paths here, neither of which lead to James Gunn being the captain of the DC ship. So in my mind, path number one is first off, the timing of this is actually worse for him in the sense that his contract we know is up first quarter spring of 27. I think there's a very high probability now the deal will be closed by the time, if not before, his contract is up. That will put the new owner in a position to fully dictate beyond that. So in the first scenario, I am looking at how is David Ellison behaving already with regard to Skydance, which is already integrating Paramount. Let's not forget, they're chomping on a studio deal now, as it is. Mm-hmm. And what have you seen? Change everywhere. Taylor Sheridan, gone, right? That's a guy who had a complete kingdom. He was carrying their streamer. He was giving them their best TV shows. He had full and complete authority to do whatever he wanted with the budgets he wanted. Sound familiar? Mm-hmm. And what happened the second the Ellisons got in the room? He's working for Universal in 2 years because they wouldn't let him be. They get in Star Trek, full reboot, clean house, everybody gone. So do you honestly think that the crown jewel of what they're acquiring in WB, they're just going to be like, we're cool, just keep it moving? There's no way. So in path number one, even if Gunn is allowed to retain his title for some interim period, there's going to be people in the room, gatekeeping, toll collecting, making decisions above him in a way that he was not subject to before. Mm-hmm. So there's a scenario where James Gunn is like, I don't need that. Why do I need that? I didn't sign up for that. That's cool. I can go direct movies elsewhere. I don't have to be the czar with 4 cooks in the kitchen. I don't have to do that. So I think there's a scenario where James Gunn himself just steps down and is like, I don't really want to do it this way anymore. Okay. The second is the Ellisons. As we've heard, there was at least one report saying David Ellison was a lot allied with Michael DeLuca, who of course is already at WB. So there's a scenario that he just says, DeLuca's my guy, he's my lieutenant, Gunn out, DeLuca in. End of story. And on we go. And I don't really need Peter Safran because I'm a producer myself. I just don't see the scenario where they're like, we love James Gunn so much, he's going to be allowed to continue in the manner in which he has. Even if somehow miraculously smaller scale projects like Supergirl or Clayface did enormous numbers. I just don't think they care.
Really, yo? I think there's a chance if those properties are successful because I mean, you mentioned Mike DeLuca and him, and who was the other person that he works with?
Well, Pamela Abdi's the co-head on the movie
Yes.
side. Yeah,
They've done a stellar job with the content that they've been putting out, right? They've
no
been
doubt.
praised and applauded
Yeah.
for what they've done.
Oh, they're on the mother of all heaters. They're on like an all-time heater right now. Yeah. Let's not forget. I mean, the battle for Best Picture is a WB contest, right? I mean, effectively, a lot of people touting one battle after another. That's a WB movie. A lot of people touting Sinners. Oh wait, that's a WB, right? Unless they kind of can't lose, right? It's like between those two movies alone, 29 Academy Award nominations on top of the bank that they made with the movies they had this past year. I mean, they're swimming in it right now. So yeah.
And James Gunn isn't in that boat.
No, that's the thing is he doesn't have that, right? He has a solid debut, an okay debut in Superman. He's not going to have that.
He's with Gilligan and them on an island. So that's going to be interesting, man. That's going to be interesting to see what happens in a year. Well, listen, the fact that we haven't gotten an announcement for Batman Brave and the Bold, and this is a topic that we talked about in our last show.
Yeah.
Is a telltale sign right there.
I think so.
Because how do you not? Yeah, how do you not greenlight that? How are you not having a script ready? How is it not in production? How is it not that you don't have a cast for it yet? Batman, they're betting on the other guy because he already has a successful one movie, and he has a follow-up that everybody says is dope except for this guy, right? So he's not in a good place. No. But they're not going to make an announcement of shifting things around with James Gunn to make that be the headline because it's not what's at stake here. That's not what we're looking to sort of bet the house on. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
The most credible report we've had was Puck News if you remember last December, put out in one of its newsletters the idea that if Paramount won, at minimum, they would take the reins of the DCU and that Gunn and Safran would have oversight. So that kind of, I would say, is pretty much as good as gospel. And that's why, but I ultimately say, look, I mean, Ellison, what we're seeing, this is a guy who wants to have his people in place and have things done his way.
Yeah.
There are very few individual, I'm just saying, like, I think James Gunn has accomplished a lot as a filmmaker. Mm-hmm. But I look at the Sheridan example and say, nobody accomplished more on TV than that guy.
Yeah.
And that relationship fractured in weeks. Because when you go from autonomy to oversight, that's tough. And Gunn has had full autonomy, full power, as we know. Sometimes
but he's been faltering lately. He's been faltering lately. Yeah.
Right, but I'm saying, right, but that's because of the merger. I'm saying Zaslav is not telling Gunn, greenlight this, don't greenlight that. Until the deal came along, it was James Gunn's creative show. And sometimes we liked that, sometimes we didn't, but it was his show. Mm-hmm. It is not going to be his show any way you cut it. And I just don't see him, honestly, wanting to play that kind of ball when he can just be a writer and a director. And that's that, he likes doing that anyway. It's like, they're not going to take him off Man of Tomorrow. They're going to make Man of Tomorrow. That's happening, right? But by the time he goes on the press tour for Man of Tomorrow, I think he will be the director of Man of Tomorrow and the former head of the DCU.
Interesting. Let us know in the comment section below whether you think that within almost a year's time, it'll be over for James Gunn's run. I think it's over as well because you can't sit there and say that he's had the same success as some of these other individuals. He certainly has a well-respected track record, but as far as bringing DC to where Marvel was heading towards, that has not happened. No. Not even close. You can sit here and say all you want about what James Gunn has done. I love what he did with Superman. I love what it did. love it all you want, but it doesn't mean he's going to continue, because he is not, again, on the path of success that Kevin Feige set back then. He is not on the level of Matt Reeves in terms of what he did with Batman, and that he can't even put out a Batman movie. And I don't think that's really him saying that he doesn't want. I think that he's being pushed in that direction. This is what we're focusing on, and we don't know about the future for you.
Yeah.
So Batman is on the ice for now, which is crazy to me.
If you're looking for a silver lining, either way, I think the timing is favorable for DC fans, just in the standpoint of you can get resolution early in 27. I think this would have been more awkward if the deal was closing, if like Netflix was going to court and the deal closed in 2028 and Gunn has this like short-term interim contract that like keeps, I think that would have been really awkward. At least now, I think you get the resolution sooner rather than later after the deal closes. And for us as fans, like, we need a direction, right? We need a course to be charted. Like, whatever that is, like, we need something to steer the ship. So if they're going to make wholesale changes, great. Make them quickly, make them decisively, and let's do what we're going to do. Or if you really are magically, miraculously going to re-up James Gunn, then sign him to a multi-year deal, put an exclamation point on the DCU and say we're back in it. Like, but either way, then we have a direction and feel like we're going somewhere. The worst place is to be in the middle. So at least we're going to get resolution. Now, my question to you, you mentioned Batman. Great segue. Let's assume for a second James Gunn is out or subjected to severe oversight. What happens to the DCU as an entity? Do you think it is like canceled and rebooted? Do you think they try to retain characters that have been established? What do you think they try to do with what has been launched and put on the board already?
It's hard to start off with something that's not initially yours.
I agree.
Now that it's mine, I can do whatever I want. And if I don't like what we've been doing so far, why would I want to make that better when I can start something new and call that my idea? We started this, not this other thing.
Yep.
So I think they start from scratch.
I agree.
I think they have to, because I don't know if there's a lot of confusion if they were to continue on with this path.
I agree with you with two exceptions. Continue.
Okay. I just don't think they continue on the path that they are in now with the characters that they've somewhat developed. But I think it would be easier to start all over and give a fresh take and a new take rather than continue with something that wasn't really working, Brian. You're not going to continue on with Peacemaker.
No,
You know what I'm saying? He's stuck in that whatever dimension. He's done. He's a wrap.
Yeah. But weirdly, Peacemaker introduced that like interdimensional prison too, right? Which was supposed to be like a big linchpin. That's what I mean. Like, this is where the interconnectedness starts to be like a domino effect, where it's like, yeah, if you take something off the board, you kind of. No, I agree with you. So I think the only two things that I think will be retained are Matt Reeves' trilogy of Batman movies. I think that actually I think is untouchable.
Hell's yeah.
And I think the other thing that will be retained is Lanterns. I think that's the other project on the HBO side that if it is as good as we think it is, that actually will be viewed as we want to carry that forward as like a DC cornerstone on TV. That's the only other one that I think will be preserved. And also because that show has not been confirmed to cross over anything from the Gunverse yet. So they kind of can get out of jail free with that. But I think, and like I said, I mean, I think there's some sadness here because there's going to be some casualties of some things that worked. But like, I think you're going to recast everything. I think Corenswet's out. I think Hoult is out. I think Brosnahan, sadly, is out. I think we're going to basically wipe the board of all of the castings. I know in the past, sometimes that doesn't happen. Like we saw like Viola Davis survived, right? Like a regime change at DC. We've seen individual characters stay in their roles. I actually think this time, based upon what you're seeing from David Ellison, I think is, and like I said, look at the Star Trek example. I think he's coming to basically, if he's going to make the change, it is going to be clean house time.
I smirk because of the time that we talked about. You guys are talking about reboot too early. Remember when we used to, but hey, look at where we at, Brian. Look at where we at.
But like, I think David Ellison would make the case that it's easier to reboot something that only has a few things. Like imagine it in the context of the MCU.
Yeah.
Let's just imagine the MCU had gotten off to a rocky start and Disney had been acquired. I mean, Marvel was acquired, obviously, while it was going on. But let's imagine just like at what point in the Infinity Saga would it have been easiest or hardest to reboot that midway through? Clearly, it's earlier, right? In phase one is when you could have done it and said, like, all right, yeah, we put Iron Man out, we put Cap out, but we can redo that. By the time you get to Infinity War, if you try to reboot it then, I don't even know how that looks. You know what I'm saying? So I think Ellison would actually tell you, no, it's better and easier to reboot it 1.5 years into the exercise because there aren't that many characters cast. There aren't that many projects. We don't have DCU Batman. We don't have DCU Wonder Woman. We can start over with Superman, or maybe you punt that to Elseworlds and let James, say, okay, James Gunn, you are a Superman guy. If Man of Tomorrow, well, that's your audition. If Man of Tomorrow hits, we'll let you finish a Superman story, but that's now Elseworlds. That's no longer our thing. We're starting our own thing. I don't see how it doesn't go that way, given the people involved in what they're doing elsewhere.
Even with that possibility, I think James Gunn is going to just wash his hands and be done with it. I don't know why he would, because I'm pretty sure, listen, when he first came out and introduced his plan, it was grand. And we've only got I would say, snippet of it thus far. And it hasn't, Brian, we said this from Jump Street. These things have to smack us in the face and say, wake up.
Yeah.
Like Cher did to, I guess, Nicolas Cage in that movie? Snap out of it. It has to do that. And it didn't do that, yo. It didn't. Yeah. I don't care how much you liked it. But the fanfare hasn't been, where's more? We want more. Now, we want Batman. But that's nowhere to be found.
And I do have to keep reminding you that the subplot of how politicized Superman became, justifiable or not. Let's not forget that is part of this equation. And so everyone who is associated with that project is going to be associated with that angle. And I think there's going to be an expectation that not be continued, and be repurposed in a different way. So I think it all points to full reboot. I do not think you will see Brave and the Bold get off the ground. I don't think you'll see casting announcement for DCU Batman I think all of that's going to be shelved very quietly. I think even if Paramount can't make that call, Ellison will just call Zaslav off the books and basically be like, "Hey, man, you need to put the brakes on all that stuff." And Zaslav will do it, because they want the deal. I mean, he wants the deal closed. I mean, that's the thing. Zaslav's no longer a gun ally. He's an ally of getting this deal closed and getting him and everyone else paid.
Getting the ducats. He wants those ducats.
Yeah.
Let's anything else, Brian, before we move on? Because I want to sort of talk about the comment that one of our subscribers had talked about with regards to the Justice League.
So let's bring it in, but let's bring it in with one other thing, which is, I think we spent a lot of time theorizing about how Netflix might approach DC content, given the different avenues and some of the creative stuff we were seeing from them, for better or for worse. I am concerned that the DC output with Paramount as the owner is going to be pretty limited. And I'm not sure how I feel about that. It means I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on fewer projects to really deliver and deliver quickly. And I say that because this is a pro forma company that's going to have a lot of debt. If you thought WB had debt, This company has a lot of debt, which means with that kind of leverage, you need to generate cash and you need to generate revenues and you need to generate profits fast. What that also means is you don't have the flex to just greenlight everything you might want. Yeah, they can say they're preserving the model and the theatrical windows and they can sound all good toward all Hollywood. But again, their deal synergies called for twice as many cost saves as the Netflix model. That means more jobs being cut. That means they need to tighten the belt. That probably means budget flexibility is coming down, not going up. So I think you're going to see less available content than Netflix might have tried and might have done. And you might feel good about that. Like that's not like there's a debate over what the better path is. But I think because of DC's importance, they are really going to be on whoever's in charge of this universe to deliver big tentpole projects on TV and film as fast as possible and with as much fanfare as possible. So I think that's what's going to happen. I'd be shocked if we got like 4 TV series and 4 films in a year. I'd be shocked if they did that.
Here's how I see perhaps them thinking about it when they pursue the initial stages of resetting or doing DC stuff. Shout outs to Gavin T. Chef 9606. I think the best path for them, for Paramount, is to do the reverse.
I'm with you. And I saw the comment and I wanted to talk about it because I think it is actually far more likely than anyone realizes.
When we set out on the path to the Avengers, we did it, over some time. I think now there is an opportunity to really bring a lot of value to Paramount Plus and to the movie theater experience by starting with the Justice League in the theaters and giving us individual shows. A Batman show. Come on, a Batman show? You think I'm not paying for a Batman show? And the other characters. TV series, and then we lead to the movies, the big event, the 3-parter. Who knows?
Yeah.
But we do these individual characters or team ups, whatever it's possible, and put it on Paramount Plus so that you can get our dollars. If you want it, I have it right now. I'm ready to give it to you if you do that.
Yeah.
But to make us wait 10 years for a Justice League,
they don't have time.
They don't have time because
they do not.
They had one attempt that didn't go well.
They don't.
We were on our way, but that seems not looking good.
No.
To start all over, to get us up to movie, because Justice League Unlimited is one of the best things I've ever. When I was a kid watching that, when did it come on a Saturday night or something like that?
Yeah, it will actually. Cartoon Network used to show it at night.
Prime time, Justice League. I couldn't wait to watch it, yo. And I think it's some of the best animated stories of DC ever done. And it was just, for me, it was like a breath of fresh air. For them to be able to perhaps start with the Justice League, leave us blown away. And then we have series on TV of those characters doing their own things, leading up to, come on, man.
So I'm going to modify the poster's thesis a little bit, but I agree with the concept for the reasons I just said. The urgency, the debt load, they can't afford a slow burn 10-year plan. They can have a 10-year plan, but it's got to come strong out of the gate. This is a studio that needs the $1 billion off the shelf.
What?
And that's hard, but that's what they need. So I think the only thing I'd be cautious about is Unlimited. The Unlimited cartoon obviously has a much larger library than the first 2 seasons did, which really focused just on the original 7. I think for the theatrical, I would try to limit it to
just the Justice League,
the main
team.
line.
That's fine. Yeah.
Because I just think I think you don't want to throw, but there's that scene in the unlimited credits where you see them all in the room on the Watchtower and there's 87 heroes. It's I don't think you want to go that far, for big screen.
Yeah.
I think what you do want to do though, and I'm just gonna say it right now because I've been riding for this guy to do something, and he works for Paramount, for God's sake. Joseph Kosinski should direct a Justice League movie. You announced that. This guy did Top Gun Maverick for them.
Yeah.
You announced that. You've got something. Hell, he's working with the writer from Andor right now in Miami Vice. How about they team up to do a Justice League movie as the first new DC project? That'll get people's attention. I guarantee you that'll look good on IMAX. So,
but that's the kind of impact.
That's what you need to be aiming at. You need to be aiming at that kind of impact with your announcement and saying, "No, we're not waiting 5 projects. You're going to come to the theater. We're going to hit you in stride. We're going to trust you as fans to know Batman, no Superman, no Wonder Woman, no Flash. Maybe Aaron Pierre he's the only one. Maybe he's the only one that gets the invite because he's lucky, right place, right time. But I think that's where you start. And I agree with you. Weirdly, you know what I started thinking about? Because one thing Paramount does have that Netflix did not. They have all the television angles, right? So HBO, they have premium cable. They have CBS. They have network TV. Weirdly, it made me start thinking about that old CW universe and being they kind of built that little kingdom on a smaller network, and that thing was the ratings gold for them for years. And I'm like, what if they gave CBS a bigger network? What if they gave them the equivalent of a CSI night, but it was all DC stuff? There's something there, right? And you're right. I don't know if you would use all your mainline characters, but that's where you could put your Green Arrow again. I don't know. Maybe we wouldn't do that. We did a good Arrow show. Maybe you would do Booster Gold there. Maybe you would do something, that was a little bit afield. Maybe you do Zatanna. Do something that that's where you go to the unlimited catalog to get people interested. And then you say, these are part of the same universe. They are part of the same universe. And then you come back around to your much bigger ensemble if the universe works. But I agree with the poster. I agree with you. Justice League, I believe, I think there's a decent chance Justice League is going to be the first project out of the gate for the rebooted DCU.
Wow. Sight beyond sight. The first project after the exit of James Gunn.
The irony is, I feel like I feel like things go cyclically, right? I mentioned the CW universe where I'm like, could you see a version of that on network TV? And I'm like, remember George Miller? He tried to do a Justice League movie 25 years ago, right? He was just he was doing a standalone Justice movie. He had Armie Hammer as Batman. It was DJ Catrona was Superman. It was younger actors, but he was going to do just George Miller is one of the best living directors. He was I want to do a Justice League movie. And they were going to do it. And then it kind of never happened because he did Mad Max. But,
that would have been something.
I think it could work. In a world where you're going to be getting presumably really young mutants from Disney as their feature presentation, Prime of Life Justice League, there should be a global market for that if you do it well.
Absolutely. Justice League is prime time, creme de la creme. You can't slow burn this. We've tried. We can't. The anticipation will diminish if you try to slow burn this.
Yep, I agree.
You gotta try to go for that home run right away.
Now, you bring that up, I bring that up. There's a certain corner of the fandom that is wait a minute, we already got a Justice League director out there. He's itching to come back. And he's trying to still plant the seeds that there are talks going on or have been talks going on. I don't see it. You think any chance? You think any chance that Zack Snyder gets back in the door?
I think he perhaps gets the shot at the Dark Knight Returns because I've always
even with
said,
Paramount. I think with Netflix he would have gotten it. Actually, I don't know. You think with Paramount he gets it someday?
I think I don't dislike Zack. I don't think anyone dislikes Zack.
Not when he's doing Frank Miller stuff. He's fine.
But that's the thing. Look at 300 again.
Yeah.
I said this before. Look at 300. Look at Watchmen. Look what he did with those. He didn't pivot too much. He didn't veer off the road too much with those. He gave you what it was, and we were happy about it. Is when he starts doing his own thing is where we get like, oh man, it'll be interesting regardless.
Yeah.
But how much can you take of it? You know what I'm saying? That's the issue. But if you give him Fragment of the Dark Knight, I think he'll do it. I think he'll do it justice. My only concern if he were to do it is the Batman Superman fight. We've already seen it, right? How different will it be? Like how that's my issue right there. Like, why would you do that? But that tells me right there, Brian, that his vision was short term. It wasn't a long term thing. Is this something that he could possibly do for Paramount, for their Paramount, like an Elseworlds thing?
Well,
I think so.
Yeah. The argument for is what we just said, which is like if this is a situation where they need impact, right? They need impact projects. Whatever else you want to say, Zack Snyder doing Dark Knight Returns is an impact announcement. It is.
Yes.
Right. And so like
Absolutely.
If you're going to say, I think that should be a theatrical release, obviously, because it is Batman. But it's like, I think you could, as long as you control him budget wise, I think you can make money with that project, right? I think reasonably you could, and honestly, you could get 2 parts out of that. You can get 2 parts out of that book, out of that graphic novel.
Yeah, there were 2 parts. I
agree with you.
Yeah,
he almost would have to almost get a re-choreographed, rewritten version of the fight. They'd almost have to redo that to make that movie original enough. But I think I see your creative argument for it. I wonder if they will make that call. But like I said, I think they're looking for big. They want to grab headlines. They want movies. They want individual projects that don't need 3 and 4 films to get there. And they want to swing at $1 billion every time they're putting something on big screen. I think that's how they're going to look at it because they need it. They need it from DC because there's not a lot of things. Like, again, you look at the franchises they own, even the ones that have that track record, like Lord of the Rings, you can't remake the Peter Jackson films yet. It's too soon. So you can't be like, hey, I can just make 3 more Lord of the Rings movies and get $1 billion each out of them. Like, you can't do that. Yeah. Harry Potter, you already committed the HBO season. That's happening, the HBO show. So it's like, you can't just remake the movie. You see what I'm saying? So like a lot of these franchises are kind of actually in motion or in stasis or spoken for. So the reboot opportunities are DC. I think there's still, obviously they're redoing Star Trek. And then maybe it's like, what does Ryan Coogler want to do? I mean, there's stuff like that, right? It's like, that's a guy where it's like, hey, what do you want to do? And like, we're willing to empower you to do that. Oh, here's the other thing that DC 100% will happen. The Zach Kreger's Henchman movie will happen. Remember, because Paramount the head of Paramount Pictures wanted to do that when he went public with that. I think that one's definitely happening.
What is that again?
Zach Kreger, remember, he wanted to base it on the Batman the Animated Series episode, The Man Who Killed Batman. When he was out promoting weapons, he said like he had this thing called Henchman that he wrote and wanted to make. And then randomly the head of Paramount Pictures was like, we'll do that with you if we ever get a chance. Well, now they're going to get a chance. I actually think that one's going to happen because Kreger's hot. And if his Resident Evil movie hits this fall, that'll be one more like, we got to get him to do this.
Yeah. Interesting things happening over at Paramount now. But much more interesting with DC. I hope, like, if Ryan Coogler, listen. If Ryan Coogler decides to do something with DC,
please.
Here's the thing, Brian, and there are milestone characters that I think he should consider and think about. I think Icon is a very different type of situation that I think could work and is a very interesting, similar to Superman, but there's a lot of different details in there that are very interesting. Like this dude, he, he did what he did with that guy from the Eternals, that he would say that this was my grandfather and my great grandfather, they all look alike. With him, it would be the same thing. And he's a Republican, though. He politically, he's a Republican.
Yeah, no, exactly. The character.
So yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So that would just be an interesting story to tell. And then you got the big dog, Spider-Man, Miles Morales. You could get Static Shock and give him that light. You know what I'm saying? That platform to be one of those characters that people can't wait to see. So there's opportunities there.
I would also point out Coogler, obviously, Coogler is very much a student of history. He loves to communicate through film. He's not going to do a project unless he can layer it. Here's a random one that as a villain in his hands could be an interesting journey. Vandal Savage, a man through time. You just sort of let him explore that as a conduit for different points in history, different vantage point. Like look at how Coogler's operated in Sinners and Black Panther, even in Eyes of Wakanda, which he was just the producer of, right? He loves that look back and then weaving that into the storytelling. And it's like, there's a DC villain sitting right there who basically is immortal and travels through time, So I think the reason why the name comes up, though, is these are the types of things I think they will be swinging at. I think they will be looking for, we need big name filmmakers in the room doing projects. We need people doing things that, like, the second they're announced, people lose their minds at Comic-Con or whatever DC event they're doing. And it's like, they're immediately top 2 or 3 most anticipated for any year that they come out. They just can't afford any less than that.
Yeah.
They just can't afford any. And that's a tough thing, because I feel like it what you lose in that process, I think you might lose stuff like Clayface. You might lose stuff like Supergirl, where it's like the object of it is not to make $1 billion. The object of it is to introduce an exciting new character and kind of go somewhere else with. I don't think they have the time to do that. And I'm afraid as a result, that's the part we're going to lose. We're going to be really all in. Our chips are going to be all in on a lower number of big projects, especially for film. TV, I think you're right. TV, I think you could do more of the unlimited catalog. You can make money doing that. You can build audience the way the CW did and the way CBS has done with a ton of their shows. You can do some prestige. If you're going to do a Batman show, it's going to HBO. That's not going to network. That's going to HBO. But you can do stuff like that. But film, yeah, I think it's, a year like this year, I don't think you're going to see from the new ownership, right? You got like Supergirl and Clayface. I don't think you're going to see a calendar like that.
We'll see. My dream project is still Christoph Waltz as Mesoplex. He drives Superman crazy.
Well,
until he realizes that's a movie that's interesting to me.
Well, it wasn't about that particular character, but we want to talk about Zack being unhappy, sad, confused, and Zack Snyder he dropped some knowledge that I had never heard about his own DCEU journey and some of the stuff. I mean, it's a really good listen. Horowitz does a great job of like starting with actually the Dark Knight Returns graphic novel and kind of saying like, I just want to hear your personal connection to that story. And it launches Zack into this long answer about mythology and you kind of like, again, whether you agree with him or not, it gives you the window into how he perceives the characters and therefore how he tries to approach them. But one of the things that kind of got my attention was this forever fork in the road moment coming off of Man of Steel, where we wind up with BVS, which I do not enjoy. And I think it's the movie that kind of sends the DCEU down like sort of an irreparable path. Even though it has individual moments, I think there's, and we'll get into the casting. He talks a lot about this stuff I didn't know. But I didn't know the specifics of what he was originally going to do as a Superman standalone sequel. And that was maybe my, like, one of the great what ifs. Was he basically was like, the second one was like Superman more off-world against Brainiac. And I was like, I'd have been here for that. I know Man of Steel has like controversy and that sort of stuff, but like when he said that, I was like, man, I actually would have wanted to see, because I really enjoyed the Krypton scenes in Man of Steel. I was like, I would have wanted to see your off-world Superman against Brainiac. And I was like, what a bummer we didn't get that.
Yeah.
And then he even kind of admits like it was a debate within the studio. And you kind of very diplomatically could tell like the studio's like, if given the choice, Batman's always going to win, right? They're always going to win. And so then he's like, okay, I have to lift from Dark Knight Returns in order to do this. And it's just like, yeah, it's like one of those sliding, like, what if we had gone the other way and gotten a Man of Steel 2 with Superman off-world against Brainiac, what the world might look like today?
I think we are in a better place with Zack if we get that movie. I think
it's very possible.
Yeah. Because again,
very possible.
Man of Steel for me isn't the worst thing on earth. I liked it. I like it. I honestly say I like it better than Superman. I do. It's a more interesting watch.
Yes,
but,
I agree with that. Yeah.
But I mean, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole with how he did Superman, but Zack has interesting ideas, and visually, what we had been hoping for to see is anything else but Lex. And we didn't want to see Lex Luthor anymore. Lex Luthor. But Brainiac in the hands of Zack and what that would have looked like, that would have been very interesting to see. Zack does interesting stuff. Whether it's great or not, that's you have to see it. And once you've seen it, let's say you already got your money. But I would have wanted to see that.
Yeah, and it's like, and like there's obviously the controversy. I wish he hadn't snapped Zod's neck, right? But I do. At the time, I remember feeling like, let's see what you're gonna do with such a monumental change in the character's biography. And then it just didn't get paid off at all, right? In my mind, when he started talking about this, I was like, well, what if like a grief-stricken Superman in the wake of doing that, like leaves Earth, right? Kind of like to find himself and make amends. And then that leads him on sort of this thing where he encounters I was like, maybe that could have been an interesting way to redeem and evolve Superman into the Superman we kind of more know. I don't know. I was like, the possibilities were there. And instead, you mentioned Lex Luthor.
He's threatening Batman. He's like, I can end you right now.
and like I said, and you mentioned Lex Luthor, I think it's a key downfall of the DCEU is the Eisenberg choice. It's just wrong in every way. And it was interesting because when Zack was talking about it on the podcast, I didn't like any of his choices.
Yeah.
Because he said the three people they reached out to, I laughed at one. Leonardo DiCaprio was one of the other people let me tell you how quick that conversation was. Leonardo DiCaprio as Lex Luthor, no thanks. Not what he does. But he would have been wrong for it too. Now, he would have been very suave, but I think he would have been wrong for it. And then he said, a young Adam Driver. No. So he had it in his mind. Now, Leo, obviously in Wolf of Wall Street, if you're looking for like the ham it up, side of like what could have been a corrupt businessman, you can sort of see it there. The other two guys, you can sort of see Zack was leaning like super geek the whole time. And I'm like,
Adam Driver would have been interesting.
You think?
I think so.
That's Adam Driver at the time of like Girls on TV. That's not even Adam Driver like, I don't know. Like,
it would have been the choice, Eisenberg, and I think Zack was pushing or agreed with that take of how Eisenberg played Lex Luthor was just all wrong. And if that would have been applied to Adam Driver, then that still would have been all wrong.
Yeah. That's the problem. The character's just flawed. It's just, and to me, it's like, that's one of those characters you can't go, in my mind, you can't be that wrong on Lex Luthor for what he means to the universe. And in that movie, you get introduced to the best and worst of Zack's casting skills, right? Because it's like Gal Gadot makes her debut in that. You're like, that's a home run casting for Wonder Woman. But Ezra Miller also kind of appears on film in that for the first time, and you're like, that's a complete miss. And then Eisenberg's a complete miss. And like Momoa appears. Momoa would kind of want to be in a win for him. It's like you see this like completely inconsistent, hit or miss casting that's going on. And it was a fascinating sort of what if of him talking about these different things that could have happened, which then led to the Justice League that we never got to see. And the only thing he said there that I was fascinated about was that he said he always viewed it as Superman's story, which when I watch Zack Snyder's Justice League, it feels much more like Batman's journey to honor the fallen Superman, right? But he says, like with conviction, the 3 parts that he envisioned were always about Superman. That was the character that was at the center of this. And I'm like, Superman doesn't have a lot to do in Zack Snyder's Justice League. It doesn't have a lot to do with Man of Steel. I'm like, for a guy you think is the centerpiece of the universe, you don't seem to want to let Cavill out of the bag. So it was a really weird, interesting take. I was like, oh, okay.
He definitely had a specific vision that not everybody was gonna like. It was his vision.
Oh, it was crazy. Remember that story where it's like Lois Lane gets pregnant with Bruce Wayne's kid, and then I think it's Bruce Wayne dies. It was wild stuff that he had. And he even referenced it in the interview where he's like, Batman is the one who has to make the ultimate sacrifice for Superman to rise as the savior of the world. And I'm like, I don't know about that, man. Like I respect your conviction in that, but I don't think that's necessarily what we wanted to see.
But that's Zack. Zack does what Zack wants to do with your money.
Also, he had a hilarious bit about the rating where he said, and it's funny, I watched BVS the other day, 10-year anniversary. And I have to admit, like he was talking about, it was so hard to get a PG-13 for that. I agree. When you watch that, it has all the feelings of an R-rated movie. And he said the number one thing the MPAA kept sending back to him was, we don't think the idea of Superman fighting Batman on screen is a PG-13 idea. It's an R-rated idea by its very nature. I was fascinated by that. And he's like, literally, we kept sending it to them. They were like, yeah, but those 2 guys fighting is an adult concept. We can't have it be PG-13. I thought that was hilarious. He also, of course, he gave James Gunn a nod. He had some very nice comments about James Gunn as Superman and as the steward of the DCU. He took the very high road there. But then he, of course, said, Josh Horowitz asked him, have there been any talks about resuming? And he said, oh, there have been talks. About Justice League 2. Oh, there have been talks.
Here's the thing. He's always been adamant about doing certain things.
Yeah.
He's never gonna let it go. He's never gonna let it go. Those are his dream projects that he wants to do.
Yeah.
So the fan base is still there. And the ones that aren't his fans of what he does are still curious enough to want to see his stuff if he decides to do it.
Yeah.
But we just can't get no more of these Rebel Moon type stuff, yo. We can't get, I'm sorry, yo. We can't get whack stuff, yo. I don't care how good you think it is. We can't get whack stuff. You can't write it.
Yeah, I will say I rewatched Zack Snyder's Justice League somewhat recently. I like it. I still like it. It's still enjoyable. I mean, it's completely unmanageable as a movie because what can you do with 4 hours and 2 minutes? But it's not, I mean, it has flaws. I mean, everything he does has flaws, but like, I will say, like, I do wish he had been able to finish it. The first one. I wish the Joss Whedon one never came out.
Yeah.
I wish we had gotten at least his 2.5 hour version of Justice League Part 1.
Yeah.
So, but I can't unsee, like I said, it's impossible to unsee like the Ezra Miller part. Like there's just parts of it where you're just like, it just doesn't work. Like you got no upside here.
Ezra was the wrong,
because he's got like these key moments in the film. That's what I'm saying. Like he's got these key moments in the film, and I know this is where people like, and I like Grant Gustin as a Flash, but seriously, like just swap him into those key moments, and the movie's immediately better.
Absolutely. You put Grant Gustin in that, and not Ezra Miller. Yo, I'm sorry, man. He was like the eyesore of those films, and there was just no way we were gonna. I didn't like. Every time he was on it, I was just turned off by his performance and the Flash and the running. I just couldn't. I just couldn't.
Yeah.
But is it Zack telling them, yeah, do that? You know, or because it was me like, hey, come on, let's keep it. You know, let's keep the motion. Let's get Usain Bolt in here. I don't know, to teach you the mechanics, but we not doing this gliding stuff that you're doing. We're not doing that. Sorry.
Yeah.
But anyway, let us know in the comment section below what you guys thought of Zack Snyder's interview, and let us know what you guys think is going to happen with DC now that potentially at some point, perhaps next year, Paramount will be the owner of this property, of this IP. Let us know what you think about a reset. We talked about it too early now. I don't think it's too early now.
No.
We're talking about, are we going to get a reset or a continuation of what James Gunn is doing if he's gone? If he's gone, are we going to continue? Or is it going to be a reset?
Pablo, you got to start all these on Polymarket tonight. See what happens. I bet you if you do, reset's going to be minus odds. I think it's going to be, reset will be the favorite, and it'll be by decent odds over continuation. Yeah.
So yeah, man, let us know in the comment section below what you guys think, man. I wish I would have put that video out where I said Netflix is going to walk.
Yeah.
Because that would have been perfect for when I give my tagline. If you haven't heard it anywhere else, you heard it here first on the Nerd Gen Report. We will see you next time.